We're going to write ourselves a function, and the idea of what it's going to do is we're going to give it an input of a name, or it could just be any piece of text, and then the output is going to be that piece of text converted into uppercase. Now, a common thing with functions is that they have inputs and outputs. It's an optional thing, but it's quite common to see. Now, the inputs we have into functions are called arguments. So we typically think of an argument as being a disagreement between people. But in the case of programming languages, they're essentially just the inputs that we give to functions. And then the outputs are what we call return values. So in this case, the name goes in, gets converted to uppercase and given back to us. So let's go ahead and write this into our code and break down how it actually works. So just below the body tag here, if I had a H1 with some names, let's do Lawrence, very original. Let's do Milan, put Milan's name in there. Let's have Rick as well. How do we write a function that converts these three names to uppercase? Well, the way that we can do it is like this. We're going to put some PHP tags in, going to close those off, and with functions we firstly write the word function. So if you've done JavaScript before, this will be very, very familiar to you. We need to give it a name. So we're going to call this shout_name. We do a set of round brackets and then a set of curly brackets. So the reason I like to do that first is because I want to make sure I have everything closed off. And I'm going to talk about what these are and what these are in just a sec. So earlier I talked about the idea of having inputs into functions, and these are what are called arguments. So with our function, we give it a name and an input of name. So we can call this anything we want. We're going to call it name, we could call it text, we could call it silly Billy. It doesn't matter at all. It's just a variable that represents whatever data we pass into the function. Now, if that doesn't make sense, don't worry. This will make more sense in just a sec, but we're going to call it name. So between these curly brackets goes the body of the function. So this is where the task itself actually happens. And what do we want to do here? Well, we want to take our name and convert it to uppercase. And also return it. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to do it by saying echo, and we want to take our name and convert it into uppercase. So the way we do that is by saying str, short for string, and then to upper, and then in a set of round brackets we're going to put our name. Now this is something that I wouldn't know off the top of my head. The names of the inbuilt functions that are part of PHP are quite hard to remember sometimes. So this is one where I would go off to Google and I would say how to make text uppercase PHP. And there we have it. It's the first result. So here it says strut to upper, then we pass in a string, and then it gives us back that text in uppercase. So the way we can now use this, if we refresh our page, so I'm going to go to the home page here, we get our three names. So Lawrence, Milan, and Rick. Now currently these are just hard coded into our header as H1s, but what we can do is if we put a bit of space in here, you don't need to worry about copying this down, is I'm going to use the function on each of these names to convert them to uppercase. So if I just put a bit of space between these H1s, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say PHP, and I'm going to close that tag. And then the way I can use the function is by saying shout_name, and then inside the brackets, I'm going to put Lawrence, and then I can copy the same for Milan, We can put exclamation marks on the end as well. And Rick. So let's do Rick. And each time it's going to use this function, and the name is going to be equal to Lawrence the first time, Milan the second time, and Rick the third time. So let's see what this actually does. Now I need to remember my semicolons here. I write too much JavaScript, so I often forget these. And voila, we have them converted to uppercase. So the idea I'm getting at here is that functions are reusable, and we can give them inputs that might be different each time, and we get a different output each time. So if we were going to change the function, we could say how to reverse text in PHP. Let's see how we do that. We have strurev. So if we change our function to be strurev, we now get my name backwards, which is Enukwal. We've got Nalim and Kur. That is our names backwards. So this is the idea of how functions work. And what we're going to do is to take this code and put it into our functions.php. So our functions.php is where we store our reusable bits of code. And we're going to put that in there. And we're going to change this one to be stripped to upper again. So even with that code moved into our functions, we can still use it and nothing will change. So just gone back to our string to upper. So what we'll do in the next video is to actually have some practical application of this rather than just shouting names out on our page. We're going to make it so that our date, which we have nicely formatted here, we can reuse that date formatting in multiple different places.